Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another live session on Facebook and, of course, YouTube with our Matric Revision series. My name is Mohammed Fazeek Peterson, and, of course, today is Business Studies Day for grade 12s. We'll be looking at our second session for paper 1. Our guest, as always, for this subject is Imran Majid, our tutor. You're welcome to follow the streams live, and also if you've missed anything or if you are unable to catch the streams live, you may go back. They remain on the YouTube and Facebook pages thereafter. Well, without further delay, I will greet your tutor for today, Imran Majid. Assalamu alaikum, Imran, and you may proceed.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, guys, to the session 2 of business studies. Today what we'll focus on, we'll recap on last week, and then we'll focus on the long questions. But I've broken down business studies, I've broken down the topic even further for you guys, each section, to make you guys understand things better. And also what we're going to do is we're going to look at what type of questions they will be asking us in the different sections of the business studies. So as we know that business studies is broken down into 2 topics, we can turn to the next slide, slide number 2. Business studies is broken down into business environments, which is business sectors, legislation, impact of legislation, business strategies. Business operations is broken down into quality of performance and human resources. So we go to the next page. I've now drawn up tips for you guys. So tips for preparing for paper 1. What you need to know is you must know all of the acts in detail. Its purpose, the advantages versus the disadvantages as well. So you need to make sure you can differentiate between the different acts. What happens is that learners get these acts confused. So you need to know each act and the differences, its effectiveness, and any discriminating actions and penalties for non-compliance. This question will be asked in your exam. So what you need to do is you just break up the word if they ask you the question. For example, the compliance meaning go ahead with things, non-compliance is not going ahead or there is something wrong. So that's how we're going to answer the question when we get there. We move on to the next slide. We now look at the second topic, which is business strategies. So the tips for this is that we need to know the types of business strategies. As we know, we have intensive, integration, defensive, and diversification, as well as the 3 main which falls under the micro, market, and macro environment, which would be SWOT, Porter's 5, and Pestle. We need to know the application, formulation, and implementation, so when to use it. As we need to know the business sectors versus business environment. So what we need to know there is each business sector, we know that it's primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. So what we need to know there is each sector comes with its own business environment. So micro, market, and macro, each one of them falls under primary, secondary, and tertiary. For example, I'll make example. We look at primary sector. We look at fishing for an example. So fishing is in the primary sector because it's a raw material. So the micro environment, how does it take place there with the fishing company? It takes place that maybe the equipment is not enough equipment. So in the micro environment, we have control over that, so we can get more equipment. With the market environment, how does that take place? Our competition, other fishing companies, are they there? How are we going to beat them? So that's our market. We have some control to no control, so we have less control over the market environment. The last one is our macro environment. In the specific location, is there fish there where we are fishing? So we have no control over that. So those are the 3 environments that we need to join with our business sectors. We move to the next slide, which we now focus on our business operations. So the tips for preparing for paper 1, we need to focus on our human resources. We need to know the relevant acts that go with this. So it's applicable to HR, so you look at the Employment Equity Act and the Labor Relations Act and how it's going to impact HR. So if you look at HR, it's quite in depth, so make sure you get your head around it. You need to know the legalities of employment contracts. You need to know the screening, placement, interviewing, selection and induction, salary determination and fringe benefits. As I said before, the fringe benefits is very important. Why? It is your housing allowance, it is UIF, pension fund, all of those benefits are fringe benefits. So you don't get any other benefits but fringe benefits. We move now to the next slide. Our next one is quality of performance. So we need to know quality control versus quality assurance. We know that quality control takes place at the end of the production process. Quality assurance takes place during and after. We need to know quality management and quality performance. You need to know the difference because this counts for 4 to 8 marks. Quality management systems as well as the 8 business functions. The 8 business functions are your general management, triple P, which is your public relations, purchasing, production function, administration, human resources, finance and marketing. You need to know that and how it links with your quality indicators. With your quality indicators, for example, one of them with finance, you need to know that the quality indicators that the business always needs to have a cash flow or money. They need to have money saved so that in time of need we have money to cover any cost. And then for your public relations, we always have to have a good image. The company always has to have a good image. And the marketing, our company, we need to now make sure that people see our company brand not only here. So word of mouth is good, but once you see the logo of the company, it makes it good so that people always remember that and they come and look for your company and come and buy at your company. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the next slide. What I want to talk about here is Pestle. So I know we've learned Pestle since grade 10, but some of us still forgot what Pestle is. We still made mistakes in our paper 1, in contextual questions in the source given to you. Know that we are talking about political. If we are looking at economic growth or interest or the exchange rate inflation, we are looking at economic. If we're looking at social, we are looking at cultural norms and expectations, health consciousness and population growth rates. Technological, we're looking at new technologies are continually emerging. So we need to look at, especially with the upgrade of phones, we need to look at our new iPhones that comes out. Are those applicable for our marketing strategies? We need to look at legal. When we're looking at legal, we need to see the changes to legislation as it impacts employment. So if we see any of those things, we need to know now this is legal and this is part of Pestle. The last one would be environmental. We'd look at global warming and the increased need to switch to sustainable resources. So what happens here is we're looking at global warming, and then your mind needs to switch immediately. Okay, that's environmental, that's the last E in Pestle, and that would be the answer. You'd see when we go over the activities just in a bit. We move on to the next slide. So what people always struggle with or forget to study actually is SITAs. SITAs is the Sector Education and Training Authority. Remember in our previous lesson, what I've told you guys is when you see the word SITA or the word training, our mind immediately switches over to Skills Development Act. So the role of SITAs report to the Director General. They promote and establish learnerships. So each company has to have a training progress or procedure in the company. They need to promote that. They need to have learnerships, especially maybe give out bursaries to learners or to the employees' children, or even to the employees to make them go study further. Also, they collect levies and pay out grants as required, provide accreditation for skills development facilitators. They also register learnership agreements or learning programs, approve workplace skills plans and annual training reports. So those are the main two topics that I wanted to speak about just before we head on and go over to the activities. So now we move on to the next slide, to the first activity. We are looking at name two intensive strategies. So now when we're naming two intensive strategies, our mind is to focus, okay, it's strategies. We know that there's 4 strategies. There is intensive, integration, defensive, and diversification. So what is the 3 intensive strategies? We know it's market development, product development, and market penetration. So those we learned in our previous lesson, so you guys need to hold on to that and stick to that, because these questions as came in the previous 3 papers of the previous years. We move to the next question, question 2.2 on the same slide. Identify the Pestle elements that pose a challenge to Cape car dealers in each of the following statements. This is the reason why I went over Pestle now with you guys. So Cape car dealers was unable to operate for a few days when riots and looting erupted after Jacob Zuma's arrest. So now we need to look at what Pestle element is involved here. So very important, we're looking at Jacob Zuma's arrest. So Jacob Zuma's arrest, Jacob Zuma is what? He's a politician. So automatically our mind moves to the first letter of the first element, which is P, which is political. So therefore our answer there would be political. Our next one, customers cannot afford to buy cars due to the high unemployment rate since the pandemic started in 2020. Our high pandemic rate and our unemployment rate. So social meaning people. Another word for social means people. Therefore, our answer now to that would be social. We are looking at the high unemployment rate. So therefore, our answer is social. 2.2.3, the car salesmen agreed to work on public holidays and are paid double the rate. So we're looking at legalities, which means we're looking at the payment rates and all of those things. Therefore, our answer is legal. It is made legal. Remember, on public holidays, what most companies do, they do pay you a double the salary, and as well as on a Sunday. Some companies if you work on a Sunday, they pay you double, especially if that company isn't usually opened on a Sunday. So on the next slide would be your answers. Remember, intensive strategy, I told you guys it is market development, market penetration, and product development. And our other answers there for Pestle elements would be political, social, and legal. We move on to the next slide. So the reason why I chose these type of questions is because it's easy questions to answer, as well as these are the type of questions that we need to get our marks from. So we normally get 6 to 8 marks from these questions, especially from the scenarios, because we get our answers in the scenario. The previous question that we did now was from the business environments. We're going to stick with business environments, and I'll tell you when we change over to business operations. So Sakihu construction, IC, Isakihu construction ensures that employees work in a safe environment and that injuries that occur in the workplace are reported. The first question they ask you, identify the act that is applicable to the scenario above. So we are looking at the keywords over there. Our keywords are injuries and occurs in the workplace and are reported. So those are our keywords. So we're looking back, we're just trying to think now, legislation, which act does this fall part of? And it forms part of COIDA. Compensation, Occupational Injuries and Diseases Act. So COIDA would be your first answer. 2.5.2, describe actions that could be regarded as non-compliant with reference to the act identified in question 2.5.1. This is the reason why in the beginning of the lesson I've told you that we need to break up the word compliant and non-compliant. So non-compliant is not actually following the rules. So we try to think about non-compliance, especially for COIDA. We think about when employees or employers bribe or prevent workers from reporting the accident, where employees provide false information about previous or serious accidents, as well as where employers who do not contribute to the compensation fund. Remember, you contribute to the compensation fund as an employee, and the employer both contribute 1%. So employers who do not allow claims for injuries or discriminate against injured employees. And the last one that I can think about for non-compliance would be employers that take too long to process the claims or delay the claiming process. So what happens here is you need to claim this the same day or within 72 hours once you get injured on site. So how COIDA works is that if you get injured on site, you can now report it and then you will now be compensated for that. But if you put 1 foot out of the business and you don't get injured on site, you do not get paid out. So we move on to the next slide where I have the answers for you guys. So what you guys can do, I know because this is a video, what you guys can do, you guys can take screenshots of the answers and of the question paper, and you then can practice and practice, because practice makes perfect. We move on to the next one, which is also part of the business environments. So this will be the last one, the scenario that I'll look on business environments before we move over to business operations. So the first question, list 2 types of leave provisions of the BCEA. So BCEA we know is Basic Conditions Equity Act. And what happens here is we look at the different types of leaves as well as the working hours. So 2 types of leave, what can you think about, guys? So what I can think about and what I know is that the leaves are paternity leave, maternity leave, as well as family responsibility leave and sick leave. So you guys can choose any 2 of those 4 that I've given you. I do have the answers on the next slide, but I'll show you once we're done with this slide. The next question, 4.2. Incomo Farm specializes in dairy farming. They supply fresh milk to Malco factory, where it is pasteurized and homogenized. If wants to pursue diversification strategies to increase its product range and markets. 4.2.1 Identify the type of business sector in which IK and MF operate. Motivate your answer by quoting from the scenario above. So when answering these type of questions, what you need to know is you need to quote the whole sentence, not only part of the sentence, the whole sentence. You need to quote that, otherwise you won't get marks. So you will get 2 marks for mentioning the sectors and 1 mark for your motivation. So in Como Farm, we're looking at the business sector that takes place there. So we know that it is a dairy farm, it is farming, which now forms part of the primary sector. So it forms part of the primary sector, and our motivation would be the first sentence. Incomo Farm specializes in dairy farming. Malco factory is now a factory which is manufacturing. We know that forms part of the secondary sector. And the motivation there is they supply fresh milk to Malco factory where it is pasteurized and homogenized. This now is your 6 marks. So basically there you got your free 8 marks already. You listed 2 leave provisions and you have the free 6 marks. That's basically easy because remember sectors you have learned since grade 8. We now move on to the next slide where we have the answers. And you can have a screenshot of that. And we move on to the next slide now. We move on to business operations. I know some of this is a bit cramped up, but we'll have to deal with this now. So the first one is 3.1. Outline 2 legal requirements of the employment contract. So 2 legal requirements. So what can you think about? So with the legal requirement, you need to have the signature of both the employer and the employee. What you also need to know is that the employer and employee must agree to any changes to the contract, as well as no party may unilaterally change aspects of the employment contract. So those are 3 that I've given you. There is more, but I'll show you in the next slide. We move on to 3.2. On the same slide, 3.2. During the lockout period in 2020, Sophia lost a job. She decided to start her own cleaning business, OCS, and clean people's homes and offices. She could not do it alone and needed employees to help her. The cleaning staff are paid per room they clean. Her administrative lady is paid per week. So we now know we are looking at the salary determination methods. We only have 2. I know some of you guys think my friends work on the gebouw or something like that, as you may mention it, and they get paid fortnight. We are not talking about that, guys. We only have 2. We have time related and we have, so yeah, we have time related and we have piecemeal. So time related, as you know, is you get paid per hour, and piecemeal you get paid for each unit you make or each thing you have cleaned. So cleaning staff, we know they get paid per room, so that is piecemeal. Our administrative lady is paid per week, so that is time related. So those are the answers for 3.1. We move down to 3.3. Distinguish between job specification and job description. Remember, I explained this last week, and it is very important because it always comes in. So the difference, job description is your duties and responsibilities of a specific job, and your job specification, basically it is describes the minimum acceptable personal quality, skills and qualifications needed for the job. So basically it's your experience also that is needed for the job. So that is that answer for that. You see how easy it is, guys, once you understand it. So familiarize yourself with it and understand it. The next one we would look at Karen beef or Karan beef. Karan beef in South Africa won the sausage trophy of the year and would like to keep the quality of the sausage high. The manager of KB has set a goal on quality, and each department is measured against the specific standards. The sausage making process is inspected during and after its making. So if we look at this inspected during and after its making, our mind already goes to, okay, I know that. That's easy. Quality assurance. We don't have to worry about that. We know during and after, quality assurance. So there's our 3 marks already. So the other one we're looking at, so we're looking at 2, right, guys? The first one we would look at is quality performance. So remember, you now need to highlight or quote the full sentence. So the full sentence is for quality performance, which is one of the concepts we're looking at. It is the manager of KB has set a goal on quality, and each department is measured against specific standards. The next quality concept that we're looking at is quality assurance, because we know that answer, and that is the last sentence we are quoting. The sausage making process is inspected during and after its making. We move to the next slide, which we have the answers for 3.1 and 3.2.1. And then we move to the next slide, which is the answers for 3.3 and 3.4.1. So now we move on to the next slide. This is the last part of the business operations that I'm going to speak about for today. So business operations, we're looking at the first question. Name any 2 steps in the PDCA model. It is your favorite, so this is where you're going to score marks, guys. P stands for plan, D stands for do, C stands for check, and A stands for act. So now you know the 4 model, the steps in the PDCA model, and you know what it stands for. So now you just give 2. So plan and do and check, or check and act. Any 2 you can mention, and you would receive that marks. 4.5 Blitz mask, BM. BM specializes in designing different types of masks and supplies to several large businesses. Jaden places orders for the material on time and follow-ups regularly to ensure it is delivered on time. Charlene is responsible for effective communication with clients to get feedback on the experience of the masks. So what you're going to do now is identify to business functions that apply to BM and motivate your answer by quoting from the scenario above. So we are looking at business functions. I've mentioned before the 8 business functions. So now we are looking where can we find the business functions, or where's the business functions taking place over here. We look at the sentence again. Jaden places orders. So Jaden places orders. What is that? That is purchasing. He's now purchasing. So that is our purchasing function. So one of our functions is purchasing function. Our motivation, remember once again, you need to quote full sentences. So the sentence we are quoting is Jaden places orders for the material on the time and follow-ups regularly to ensure it is delivered on time. The next one that we can find is, it can either be, so we're looking at Charlene is responsible for effective communication. So effective communication, we're looking at marketing, or we're looking at public relations, the image of the business. So that can be another answer that we can answer with. So it's either a market function or public relations, and we can quote the same quote there, which is Charlene is responsible for effective communication with clients to get feedback on the experience of the masks. There is one more that I seem to pick up over here, which is your production function. So the production function there, we can go designing different types of masks and supplies. So that is your answer over there. So you have a business function in each 3 of the sentences. So we move now to the next slide, which is the answers on the next slide. We have our answers over there. And we move to the next slide. I would like to say thank you very much to all you guys for paying close attention and for listening. Also, with this paper 1, so those are the long type questions that we can look at, especially the scenarios and where we gain points and marks. For next week, what we'll focus on, we will focus on paper 1 essays and how to answer an essay. So that will focus in on next week. So that will be session 3. The way to contact me, you can contact me on my cell phone number if you need any assistance or anything, which is 061 359 4637, or you can just email me with any questions or anything I can help you guys with, or for tutoring if you guys need tutoring, which is Imran, IMRAAN 218-246-870 @gmail.com. Shukran and thank you very much.
Shukran so much, Imran, for that wonderful session. Of course, Business Studies, Paper 1. This is the second session of this series, and we look forward to next week, inshallah, as we continue. As we mentioned, this video stays up on Facebook and YouTube, so you can go back and check it out again. And don't forget to take the screenshots with all the answers that were given, so that you can refresh yourself and get those concepts into your memory. Well, from myself, Muhammad Fasih Peterson, Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Forward to, inshallah, our next session as we continue with our Matric Revision program. Stay with us.